وسهلا بكل الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي، أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Good morning. The Syrian government may soon regain full control over its entire territory by taking Idlib, the last rebel-held city. So what will happen next? Where will the remaining rebels go? Can we expect any political settlement soon? Will Damascus initiate any political reform? Will Turkey withdraw from Syria? Will the refugees and displaced return home? Will Assad remain in power for life? These are some of the questions we will be discussing with our distinguished guests and experts. From the U.S., we have Mr. Ray Hanania, a Palestinian-American writer. From Lebanon, we have Mr. Dr. Haissam Bou-Said, an international human rights activist. From France, we have Mr. Saker Idris, a Syrian journalist. And from Britain, we have Mr. Tom Duggan, a journalist who lives now in Syria. So my first question will go to all four guests, one at a time. We'll start with Mr. Ray Hanania. What is the likely scenario that may ultimately emerge from Idlib?
There's going to probably be greater massacres that once the ceasefire takes place. The Russians are probably the most unreliable, corrupt government that we have in the world today. Their involvement in Syria has done nothing except cause more and more destruction. They're not stupid. They know how to organize politically efforts to attain their objective, which is part of the objective of Iran, Hezbollah, and this war criminal Bashar al-Assad. The truth is that once the ceasefire goes into effect, the Turks will probably back out because they've done a terrible job in defending civilians in Syria. They haven't been very successful. And as soon as that happens, the Russian warplanes will continue to bomb civilians and massacre refugees until Assad has complete control of the country.
Next, Mr. Dr. Bou-Said, same question.
First of all, I would like to rectify, I am the Ambassador Commissioner of the International Human Rights Commission in the Middle East, and the commission is based in Geneva. This is one. First of all, the situation in the Syrian north will not reach a crisis, as the American team wishes that enter the path of emerging crisis in Idlib, northern Syria, and they are trying to impose it. When the interest of the three countries, Russia, Iran, Turkey, immersed in the existing mud in Idlib approach, we must see that economic and political interests of them float on the surface of the right of the Syrian people, so that if we gather all the points that these countries meet on, it does not constitute the Syrian national interest that requires by ending the Turkish presence and its allies, which includes among them the Takfirist group, internationally banned. Now, what really happened in the talks between President Putin and President Erdogan? And we can realize that the Turkish side reaches 4 points exactly, which is that the Turkish side signed a ceasefire agreement. Number 2, the Turkish side has now signed a protocol for fixing sites at the current camp, that is any retreat, warning, and sense of threat. Number 3, the Turkish side signed in Moscow the obligation to fight the terrorist group by virtue of the war ranking. Number 4, and this is the last point, that it's on the shoulder of the Turkish sides when they signed in Moscow recently their approval of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Syria. We believe that no escalations will happen for a while, and this is a ceasefire. We cannot say this is a final agreement.
Okay, next, Mr. Idris. Same question.
Well, I guess this agreement, it's going to be fragile. The ceasefire, it's going to be fragile because there is still tension in this area. It's under very kind of mass chaos caused by the Syrian regime, Assad regime, and Moscow as well, because there is a hollow victory claimed actually by Assad and by Russia. We can see the influence, the impact of this hollow victory. A lot of displaced, a lot of Syrian millions, they are trying to on the borders, they are trying to escape from this chaos, they escape from these massacres from either the Russian regime or the Syria or the Assad regime. We can say there is no really kind of regaining the control. Turkey also now, Turkey, they are sharing the power with Russia and other countries. I guess there will be no really long ceasefire. It's going to be. The only thing now, there are war criminals in Syria, so Assad will control only the people who are pro-regime, either because they are scared of him, of his repressive authorities, or they are sectarian sometimes pro him. So I don't think that will be kind of regaining a real regain for the territories in Syria.
Mr. Tom Duggan, first of all, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
No, you're not, sir. It's Duggan.
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 Okay,
Can you hear me?
I apologize about that. Now, you are in Syria, and you are in the best position to give us a close-up picture of what's happening and what will happen out of Idlib.
Okay. Idlib's ceasefire does not exist. Within the first hour, Syrian positions were attacked by jihadists. Al-Qaeda has clearly stated that Erdogan does not represent them in this war. How Erdogan is going to control them under the UN mandate that he had to any UN terrorist group recognized to be taken away and out of Idlib. It's never happened. It won't. This war will go on. It will go on clandestinely. To the first guest that spoke, Assad will be voted into power because at the last elections, I watched people queue under shellfire to vote for President Bashar Assad. The people here love him. The West is only after one thing: resources. This war isn't about Assad, it's about resources, it's about oil, and it's about power.
Mr. Hanania, would you like to respond?
Well, I mean, I respect everybody's opinions, but I think it's clear since the history of the Assad family, this has never been a good family. They're worse than Saddam Hussein has ever been. They got less attention since 2011 and this brutal conflict that Bashar al-Assad has directed with the help of Iran and Hezbollah. and now with the Russians against rebels. It's become a confused mess, and I believe there was some hope that maybe with Turkey in front, and I'll tell you, many Americans were disappointed that President Trump, who probably doesn't even understand the basics of what's happening in Syria, decided to back out. But there is no pressure now on Assad. And anybody, in all due respect, nobody in Syria can stand up and criticize Bashar al-Assad without losing their life. Nobody can stand up and say that they want freedom in Syria now without losing their life. So, yeah, they're going to cheer because that's the way the population in Syria has been conditioned to survive. That if you want to survive under Assad, this brutal war criminal and dictator, that you need to support and appear as if you're supporting him, or pack up all your clothes and flee the country, because right now nobody is defending the refugees anymore. They're going to be destroyed, and the Russians are going to make sure that their client, Bashar al-Assad, is protected. They will target those refugees, they will destroy them, and put the focus of the effort of the world on helping the refugees rather than on regime change, which is really what Syria needs.
We'll be discussing the situation of the refugees in a second, but it's good that you brought up the Trump administration's position in Syria, or Trump's personally switching on and off. So let me take the viewpoint of my distinguished guests, and let's start with Tom again. What do you think about Mr. Trump's position in Syria?
Well, Mr. Trump is an imbecile. The man is an absolute joke. He bombed Damascus after a fake gas attack, which was now proven fake by the International Committee for the Protection Against Gas Escape Attack. I've forgotten them, an ICW or whatever the name is, because they don't really exist. They're an arm of the CIA. The whistleblowers have said the gas attack report was fake. He didn't even wait for information to come out. The whole place was sealed up because I was there. There was no internet, no communication whatsoever. And he attacked Damascus with, I think it was 113 missiles, Cruise, Tomahawk. I had missiles going over my house. I was watching explosions. How can a man attack a country? The court hasn't decided who's guilty and who is not. And it's been proved it was a fake attack.
Ambassador Bou-Said, what do you think about Mr. Trump's position?
Well, Mr. Trump is not in a good position to be talking about Syria because he was behind all this mess. He and his allies in the Middle East. It is well known that Turkey was one of the main allies that messes in the Syrian land in the north. So President Trump, he's going to be facing, I believe, the Syrian portfolio in the next upcoming elections. So going back to what Mr. Ray said about President Assad, let me make some points very clear. As a Human Rights Commission, we know that in the battle we do have a lot of violation from all sides. This is something that is normal and usual in combats. But I would like to call Mr. Ray's attention on the NATO report that was filtrated on 4 or 5 years ago, before this last presidential elections, when they said that the West shouldn't call for monitoring the elections in Syria. And when they were asked why, the reply was because President Assad owns more than 70% of the population face. And they believe that if he's going to be elected under the international monitoring system, so the West would be obliged to give more and more credentials to President Assad legitimacy in Syria, where President Assad doesn't need any foreign legitimacy, because if he were not legitimate to his people, I believe President Assad would be a long time away out of the palace in Damascus.
When we get back after the break, I will ask the same question to Mr. Idris. So stay with us for a second.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, seafood dinners, and they offer special big trays of your favorite food, plus much more. Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab address is 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Their phone number is 248-538-9552. That number again is 248-538-9552. And the supermarket is open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Kushat's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan Fertility Centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing Syria, and before the break, we were talking about the position that Mr. Trump, President Trump, is taking on Syria. Let me go to Mr. Idris. I would like to hear from you.
Well, Trump, usually the states, it's not a charity. All the countries are not charities. So Trump is like looking for his own interest, matter of his election or matter of the United States. So I guess, as mentioned, he's not in a position to say that, as he is not also honest. Neither him nor the previous Obama, they were not honest at all in really finding a solution in Syria, because Assad still represents an obstacle to establish a peace in Syria, establishing a real peace in Syria, and unfortunately he will remain some time in the power due to the support that he received from Russia. But commenting on Mr. Tom, that he said that the people, they love Assad in Syria and they vote for him, of course, who remains in Syria, they will love him, otherwise they will be tortured to death in his detention center. So I guess it's very complicated for that talk. There is kind of political lining up among the countries who are involved in the Syrian cause, Syrian file, and I guess there is a war crimes committed by Assad and Russia and other allies as well, and other countries. So if the countries even United States, Trump, or other presidents, other countries, they want really to Assad to stay in power, then, well, they have to open the doors for immigration, for immigrations for the Syrians who are suffering from the massacres, who are homeless now in Syria, who are suffering the weather situations as well, because there is really a kind of ethnic cleansing and genocide in Syria.
That's not true.
I see, Mr. Tom. Tom, you are smiling. I see you smiling. So,
can I ask a question? One question. How many of your guests have actually been in Syria during this war?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
How many of your guests have actually visited Syria during the war?
Well, my dear, I was displaced by Assad regime since very long time, and a lot of people like me, and there are journalists like you, colleagues, colleagues, they were killed and tortured to death. 450 journalists were killed in Syria. Your colleagues, they are your colleagues. Most of them, they were killed by Syrian regime, by Assad regime, and Russia. So you have to
answer my question. What year were you last in Syria? What year?
What year? 2014.
2014. I witnessed ethnic cleansing in 2014 in many villages.
Okay, do you guarantee my life if I went back to Syria? Do you guarantee my life? Do you guarantee my life? This is the most important question. Do you guarantee the life of
to the question. It's my turn to speak, not yours. Wait till you're asked. I witnessed ethnic cleansing in villages in Latakia, in Kasar, on the Turkish border. I witnessed murders, I witnessed atrocities, all carried out by your so-called friendly moderates. Now, Bashar Assad's family, whatever you may say about them, are the founders of this country. In 1973, they started a building production on hospitals.
The Syrian, not you. I don't allow you to say they found Syria. No. This is no. Of course, I will not allow you as a Syrian to say they destroyed Syria since 1970s. They destroyed this family. They destroyed Syria. And the Syrian, not you. And the Syrian, not you. And the Syrian, not you, my dear. And the Syrian, not you. It's not allowed to say Assad family they built the country. Actually they destroyed the country by preventing the democracy from this country by detaining the people, political detainees. We are 100,000 political detainees in Syria. Even my family, they were detained in 1970. I did not even meet my family because they were in jail. So please, don't claim that you are talking about don't claim that you are
International report that was on saying that, which is then proven to be false.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on.
Please, you came from democratic background. Don't defend dictators. It's a shame on journalists to defend a dictatorship.
I believe in democracy, sir. And what I can see is that the Syrian people are living under democracy. And if you go to your so-called friendly model, there's no
why he disappeared in jail.
Democracy and
Let's move on. Let's move on. I see Ambassador Bou-Said. I see you shaking your head. Go ahead.
Yes, first of all, when it comes to the displaced issue, I am the best person who can approach this matter because we are following all single details at the Human Rights Commission. Now, believe me, this portfolio was politicized by many foreign countries who were involved directly in the Syrian mud. And after a while of that following, we realized that we have 98 states were involved in the mass killing in Syria, and they were also involved in destroying many of the national infrastructures in Syria also. So I don't believe that the responsibility may lay on one side, but I believe we could put it on two sides, but with a different ratio. We cannot approach the government while defending, according to the international law, the national interest of the public services and other entities in the country by putting them face to face with the flagrants that have terrorist backgrounds, and especially that ISIS and Al-Nusra Front are being banned by the United Nations Security Council. They are considered to be terrorist groups. And we shouldn't also forget that the main body of the fighters, whether it was in the west or east or everywhere in Syria, they are mostly from these bodies. And we have many documents that we sent to the council in Geneva, and has been proven that most of the killing and mass killing were done by the terrorist group. I'm not saying that the Syrian army did not commit some errors or some violations in some areas, but what I'm saying that we shouldn't put the ratio 50-50 or 70-30 on the government Syrian army, who are basically obliged to defend all the territories. Now, when we come to the displays, also this portfolio had a lot of mistakes, and these mistakes were meant to be on purpose by the United States of America and its allies. They have spent billions of dollars on what we are witnessing today, the displays, and who are preventing these Syrians to go back to their home are the U.S. and their allies, and we know what we are talking about, and it is being debated at the Council in Geneva, and I believe this is why the U.S. withdrew from the Council, because they do not want to comply with the United Nations Human Rights Council outcomes, okay? So this displaced issue needs more than a session with your U.S. radio. It needs hours and hours to talk about. Okay, but we can come out with a lot of figures. We can show up that who are really behind stopping these displays from going back. Now, I can give you an accurate image starting from Lebanon, where I do reside. In Lebanon, we have a political party that are allied with the factions in Syria who are fighting against the government. And they were trying mostly to stop Syrians from going back to the safe territories that was, recently under the Syrian army, and it was considered by the United Nations as a safe zone. So these factions, political factions, who are supported by the United States of America, they were the main obstacle of all the displaced Syrians to go back to Syria, and it was not the government of Syria. Syria sent an official letter to the council that they are ready to discuss all means and all aspects of getting back them safely under the United Nations supervision of the council and the commission.
When we come back after the break, we will be discussing whether Syria can be united again. After the break.
The Rama Relief Foundation provides humanitarian aid into areas inside of war-torn Syria, as well as aid to the refugees who have fled to the neighboring countries in the Middle East. The foundation offers food baskets, container shipment, mental health, education, soup kitchens, and more. Go to ramarelief.org or call 248-990-4247. Any donation amount made to Rama will go to sustaining many lives. Call now 248-990-4247.
If halal is important to your family, you can trust that Miramar will offer not only the highest quality halal products, but the best tasting and healthiest foods that can be placed on your family table with confidence. Miramar is the first and oldest halal certified food brand in America, serving the Arab and Muslim community, and offers a wide range of halal food products. Check out Miramar's halal food selection today by visiting Miramar's exclusive distributor, Ziad Brothers Importing at www.ziad.com.
Are you going to start a restaurant or grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Naji Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design. New location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing Syria, and my question now goes to all four guests, but let me start with Ray Hanania. With so many countries having a foothold in Syria, do you think Syria can be united again? Ray?
No, not until Assad is removed from power. Listen, the Russians have repeatedly, including this week, blocked the UN from taking any action against Assad's regime. And by the way, you only need to commit one war crime to be a war criminal. And Assad has committed many war crimes, including using chemical weapons against civilians, women, and children. That's been proven repeatedly. The fact that the refugees are running from Assad and Russia's Putin's forces and his airplanes is proof that they're being victimized by the Syrian government and soldiers, and they're not being protected. Syrian forces are government forces, and they have to be held to a higher standard than the rebels who are militias and civilians fighting for their freedom. Russia's engaged in a very sophisticated disinformation campaign to distort and confuse the facts. So the truth is, will we be able to see any resolution to this conflict? No. What we will see is continued violence from the government. We'll see more and more refugees. We'll see more and more deaths. And maybe when one of the neighboring countries finds the courage to stand up to Assad again, as they did 10 years ago, we might see a change. But we won't see one in the near future.
Tom, go ahead.
Yes. Ray, when was the last time you were in Syria? Because
you know what? I don't have
what
to
it
be in
is.
Syria.
I was
when was the last time you were in Nuremberg? You know, I mean, that's ridiculous.
And I was
the fact that you're protected by the
chemicals.
Syrian government allows you
These
to be in
terrorists
Syria.
were producing.
That's a phony argument, and it shows how weak you are when it comes to disclosing
When were you last in Syria?
addressing war crimes. Because that
there's only one person I
that
can
you
see
don't
on this
care about the war
program that
crimes.
has been in Syria
That's
recently,
pathetic
and that is the good doctor.
That's a pathetic argument.
You
There's
can
thousands of
go
people in
and
Syria
see
today
what's going
who are
on.
witnesses to the massacre there.
In Douma, they killed 4,000 hostages. We're expecting 4,000 hostages out of Douma, and
For
Al-Sham
every incident that
killed
you bring up,
4,000. We
you
got
need to stop
2,000.
it. For every incident you bring up, there are 5 that Bashar al-Assad, one of the worst war criminals,
let's
has
look at the
committed
first
against
gas
the people.
escape.
How many political
First gas
detainees were
escape
killed in
state.
Assad regime detention center?
Hundreds.
How
How many
Hundreds and
political
hundreds.
detainees were killed in Aleppo Eye Hospital? Where whipping was a common occurrence?
Please don't manipulate. How many political detainees they were killed since 1970?
I was there. I was in Aleppo.
How they allow you to be there? Can you justify how they allow you to be there? Can you justify how they allow you to be there? Detainees, they were
wouldn't be
tortured.
there if the government
Yes.
were against them.
You ask.
I asked.
Can
And
you?
what
Can,
Western media doesn't is ask. They come over and they film what they
can you
want.
guarantee the
CNN,
life? Can you guarantee the lives of returned people? Can you guarantee the life of returned people?
CNN left and filmed a jam factory, a terrorist-making jam factory, right? I'm not going to argue with you. I was there. Do you remember the last time you were here was 2014?
Why we are not allowed
he was
to be
here
there?
a few weeks ago.
You ask yourself why the Syrian not allowed to be there, whereas you are allowed to be there, because you are defending a tyrant, you are defending a criminal,
right?
As involved with the crimes.
I'm defending the truth. I'm defending
No, you're
the
not.
truth, and the truth is what
No.
I have never seen a Syrian Arab army officer or soldier mistreat a prisoner. But I've seen plenty of prisoners being mistreated by terrorists.
You are defending a criminal who killed your colleagues, a journalist in Syria. It's a really a shame.
Listen, there's 152 journalists being killed in Syria that I personally have worked with and known. 7 of them are my close. The last one to get killed was Khalid, working for RT. I've got a friend in hospital now from RT who was blown up on a landmine left behind by your so-called friendly moderates. Now, this affects me personally. I live in Babtuma area. It was the heaviest shelled area of Damascus from 2016 to 2019. Don't tell me anything about that. My house was hit 3 times. I worked as a medic in the street dealing with dead and dying.
From Mars Planet to tell you I'm Syrian, not you. And he's using you to defend a crime.
Syria
he's using you, unfortunately,
place of culture.
Defending a crime.
Syrian.
Mary Colvin was
I'm not
killed.
Syrian.
Mary Colvin. Mary Colvin was
Ambassador Bou-Said. Ambassador Bou-Said. Go ahead. Can Syria be united?
Yes, I would like, Dr. Atef Gawad, I would like to go back to what Mr. Ray said about the attacks, the chemical attacks in Syria. Well, let me tell Mr. Ray that I was the one who was behind the whole report at the council when we registered many violations on that issue. We had factories, we had materials, we have all these aspects that was used in the field during the Douma issue, the Khan al-Asal, and the Ghouta. And believe me, if I say that what the White Helmet did also was in the report. It was a heavy report, and that was submitted to the council at the 38th session. And when it was submitted, Great Britain withdrew their alibi and went to the Security Council and called for a session to on Syria to let's say to judge Syria on what is going on in these 3 areas without knowing the content of my report. But when the content was revealed, they went back and they admitted that White Helmet really did all this fabrication of what we saw on the television in accordance with the BBC. And this is a statement that was out from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Great Britain. So what was really happening at this point, we also went back to the committee on the chemical weapon, and we only stand with the first report and not the other reports that was under pressure from other foreign states that they was in the intention to falsify the results that came out from the first report. And this is why I believe that this committee is freezed now at the UN because of this many interference from many states. So it was reported and was documented that by all kind of documents, if you want, we have, and it was submitted also, that most of the chemical weapons was used by the rebels who were occupying these territories, and also they injected many children, okay, with some chemical materials before submitting them to the committee, and it was also documented by videos. So on this point, I believe it was clear. We go back to what the committee the Commission and the Council is undertaking nowadays in this matter. We believe that the chemical issue is behind us now, and we know who was behind it, who supported it, who financed these kind of activities, and it's all in the report.
Mr. Idris,
first of all,
if the Syrian army regain control of Idlib, what will happen to the rebels? You call them rebels, you call them armed opposition, you call them terrorists, whatever you want to call them. But what will happen to them?
Well, first of all, I would like to comment on something very important, that we need really to live in a civilian state, regardless of what the names you call, because we lost the faith in the armed factions since very long time. Most of the Syrian and even the Free Syria army that disappeared since very long time. So we can call them, personally, I call them the allies of Turkey, the allies of Turkey that's supported by Turkey. Well, there will be a lot of chaos, a lot of migrations and immigrations. People, they are running away from because they don't trust the repressive Assad authorities. Like, for example, what happened in Daraa, for example, there is 700,000 that in Daraa, about 50,000, less than 50,000, they returned, but unfortunately due to the lack of confidence with these authorities. So the international community has to hold this responsibility and to hold the criminals accountable from both sides. It's very important to pinpoint that to hold both sides accountable, whether Assad authorities or terrorists or what we call so-called moderated armed factions. So I don't think that there will be a stable area, especially now that we could, that the situation is very complicated now after Turkey appeared publicly through its army inside Syria. That indicates also the situation is more complicated. So I think it's going to be stable. The Assad regime has to be toppled down, I guess, and we need a really Marshall Plan in Syria to be stable, because the people, they don't trust the security intelligence, the intelligence of Assad regime, and they don't trust the army itself. That what happened in Sanamen in Daraa a few days back, they mentioned clearly, because they don't trust, because this army is really driven by ideology. It's not by faith of protecting and defending Syrians or civilians.
Ray, what do you think should or will happen to the rebels?
I think that the civilians are going, anybody that resists the Assad regime will be killed. They'll be imprisoned, they'll be tortured, and they're fleeing that fear. There's no doubt about that. All the refugees that have crossed over into other countries are testifying to the same thing, that they're being victimized. So, yeah, I think temporarily Bashar al-Assad, after many years in this conflict has surfaced, to regain part of his power, mainly because of the Russians and because of support from Iran and Hezbollah. And that's it. The worst thing that could happen would be for Syria to turn its sights again on Lebanon and blow up another prime minister over there. I think that it's terrible that what Syria is in today, that they're allowed to continue to do what they're doing. So there's no good picture for the next few years, except more suffering. But there will be isolation of Syria. Syria's government will not be allowed to enter into their normal relations with other countries. They won't be given the recognition that they desire, and they'll continue to be looked at as a pariah nation until there's government change.
We'll continue our discussion after the break.
Life is a nonprofit charity that's provided humanitarian aid and development to people and communities for over 25 years, regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life for Relief and Development rushes in to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Please help improve these efforts. Make your tax-deductible donation to Life now at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. Imad Nakash is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. Imad Nakash. See Dr. Imad Nakash and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
If halal is important to your family, you can trust that Miramar will offer not only the highest quality halal products, but the best tasting and healthiest foods that can be placed on your family table with confidence. Miramar is the first and oldest halal certified food brand in America, serving the Arab and Muslim community, and offers a wide range of halal food products. Check out Miramar's halal food selection today by visiting Miramar's exclusive distributor, Ziad Brothers Importing, at www.ziad.com.
I am Atef Abdel Gawad. Join me the first Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. I will be discussing some of the most important issues and events in the Middle East live on America's Voice of the Arabs. WNZK 690 AM and WDMV 700 AM.
Welcome back to Radio Baladi. We are discussing the situation in Syria. And let's move now to discuss the situation with refugees. Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, Europe have millions and millions of Syrian refugees. What are the prospects for their return home? Or you think they are settled for good where they are? Or maybe that's what they want to do. Stay wherever they are now. Let's start with Tom.
Well, it's simple, isn't it? The West and Europe and the rest of the world doesn't want the terrorists back into their countries, the ones that were sent over to Syria via Turkey. So it's Turkey's problem, basically. They supported them. They allowed them to go through. No one will give these Chinese, Chechenian, German, French fighters a passport. They'll be stopped. Leaves the real Syrian people that are being held against their will in Idlib and in other places as human. What comes of them? They'll be welcomed back into the family. They'll be welcomed back into Syria. What becomes of your terrorists? I don't know. That's Turkey's problem.
Mr. Idris.
Well, I guess the international community, they have to find really solution, because the refugees are a very complicated situation, either in the neighborhood countries or in Europe, because it's really putting the international community under pressure. So they have to find solution, because not a lot of refugees, they intend to go back to Syria because they are really scared about what's going to happen, about this scorched earth that is used also by Nazis in Syria, either Assad regime or Russia. So they have to find solution. If they want to really get rid out of this issue, they have to find solution, a critical, an important and real solution for that. Otherwise, this matter will stay raised up and will cause a lot of problems for the international community. Actually, they put them in the corner, because what's happening is shameful for the humanity.
Ray, what do you think should or will happen to the refugees?
Well, like I said, The terrorism from the government is going to continue with the support of the Russians. That's not going to change. There doesn't seem to be much pressure on Syria today, but I think that's going to change. The government's not going to allow these refugees to come back because anybody that criticizes the government will be tortured or murdered in Syria. That's the way the Assad regime has been doing things since the 1970s under both the father and the second oldest son. That's just the way of life in Syria. It's a real tragedy that country has been destroyed that way, and I don't see any immediate relief for those refugees at all.
Ambassador Bou-Said.
Well, before we go into the refugees issue, I would like to call Mr. Ray attention that the Lebanese Prime Minister, Dr. Hassan Diab, is a professor resident at the American University of Beirut for more than 15 years. So saying that he is the outcome of the Syrian regime, this is not true. Okay, this is number one. Number two, I also believe that there's a lot of mislead at the administration of President Trump. Because if you go back to the recent meeting between President Putin and President Erdogan, and the outcome was on three main points, which said that fighting all terrorist organizations classified as terrorism by the Security Council and ensuring Syria's sovereignty. This was one of the main points. Number two, establishing a safe area 6 kilometers deep on both sides of the Aleppo-Latakia M4, it's what's known by M4 road, and conducting joint patrols to protect the road. And the number three agreement between both parties was that the Turkish recognition of the control of the Syrian army and the cessation of attacks on the Damascus-Aleppo International Road in preparation for the eventual reopening to civilians, which is the M5. So this is one of the main points that the U.S. failed to achieve at the north of Syria. Now, regarding the displaced, we believe that, and according to what we have officially from the government of Syria, they expressed their intentions officially by an official letter to the Human Rights Council and to the Commission, expressing their intention to welcome all displaced. We do not call them refugees because this terminology also is very dangerous for all the displaced in the area. Okay, we don't allow to use refugees, they are displaced. Now, having an official letter from the government of Syria led us to start the next movement by gathering all the displaced who are willing to go back intentionally to the free area and protected area and safe zone area in Syria. But some of them who feel that they might be arrested because of their criminal record in Syria, either they are part of the ISIS or al-Nusra or the Igor or any dangerous fractions that was fighting in the north of Syria or any part of Syria, I think they intentionally will not go back. And this is a case that we have to solve later on, after ending the Syrian crisis. Now, emphasizing on that Assad will not continue ruling, I mean, we believe in democracy, and I believe the U.S. is one of the main leader states, countries in the world that believe in democracy. And the only door to exercise democracy is elections. This is why we call for a free election on the upcoming elections under the monitoring of the international communities. And I hope, and I quote 3 lines under, I hope that the U.S. and their allies will not stop, or they will not try to put obstacles on this issue, because they believe if anybody will, they have to recognize him officially, and all the allegations will drop down.
My last question, please give me a brief answer because of the time frame. If you are to advise the international community on the best way to resolve the Syrian crisis, what would you say? What would be your advice? Let's start with Ray.
The only quick advice is one simple one. They need to take the Assad government out. They need to impose greater sanctions. The U.S. has some sanctions that they're looking at. The United Nations needs to impose sanctions. And we need to find a way to break up that alliance between Iran, Russia, and Syria. That's the only way.
Mr. Idris.
Well, I advise the international community, really, as it's mentioned, to start under their supervision a real democratic election, for that with participation, engagement of the displaced and refugees worldwide, because if this election was processed with the people only inside Syria, of course, he will win the election. Otherwise, he will lose. And finally, I will congratulate Assad for the British cobbles within his team. Lie, tell you people believe you. This is really a shame.
Mr. Tom Duggan.
First of all, dialogue, conversation, talking to each other, not guns, not weapons, not war. Second, reach an agreement on lifting sanctions. For 10 days, I watched a child die with water on the brain because we couldn't get a stint that was worth $5. At this moment in time, there are power cuts. Electricity's rationed, petrol's rationed, diesel's rationed, food prices are going sky. Lift sanctions. Mr. You don't know what you're talking about. Sanctions are killing people more than what the terrorists are.
Ambassador Bou-Said, in 30 seconds, please.
First, we are part of the international community. The only thing we do, call on all the parties to withdraw from the backing of all the factions and sit down in a serious talk. That's what's going on actually in Geneva. We support the talk in Geneva. And beside that, there is no other way to solve this problem, because using military aspect would not solve the problem. We emphasize on what our Secretary General did mention, and every time he's being asked about the Syrian issue, he always say and mention and emphasize that there is no military way to end the situation in Syria, only by negotiations.
Thank you all for your contribution to this program, and I would like to wish you a very good weekend, and I will see you the first Friday of next month. Have a good weekend.